In this video, we'll be setting up our species for an inshore tournament in WebPro Tournament Manager. We'll start with a pretty clean template here. We've just got a newly created tournament with a single angler on a single team. We'll use that to check out our scoring against the species setups that we do. And we'll go across a few different setups that we can try in for different weigh-in types for your tournament. And just you can follow along and match what's best for your particular tournament. So the simplest of the setups is a single species tournament. And in that case, basically we just would click add species here next to species. And let's say this is a bass tournament. We'd give the name to our single species. In this case, let's just say it's a largemouth bass. Oh, we've got that already there. And we would click add species to tournament. And now we have a real simple single species tournament. This you can use to run scoring against the weight for your bass, the length, if you have that set up in your tournament settings. The weight is the default. The length you'd have to change under the scoring tab in your tournament settings. And against points or a combination of. So in this particular setup, if we would just leave it just like that, we could run over to the event log, which is where we would add our catches. And we'd click event log and our catch submission form up here at the top. We could choose our John Smith on test boat 1. We would add in a catch for him for this largemouth bass, and let's just give it a weight of 5 pounds. If this was a points-based tournament or a mixed tournament, you could add the points in here. And we would add the catch, and it would appear in the catch log below. So now we've got a 5-pounder. And let's say more weights come in, and we've got a 7-pounder. And we add that in. We could use our leaderboards to create, to find our big fish. So it would be our 7-pounder. Or we could do an aggregate of these two and we get our 12 pounds for our aggregate largemouth bass. So that's the simplest setup here. Let's clean out this log and let's go back to the species setup and let's change some things. So if I click setup here in the top right corner, I can always get back to the tournament setup page. And let's say, so this is a multiple species tournament. So let's say we've got largemouth bass and smallmouth. So I'm going to go ahead and add a species here, and I'm going to choose smallmouth bass. And I'll actually have to type this one in fully. Bass. And it looks like it's spelled correctly. So we're going to go ahead and add the species for that tournament. And let's say this is a points-based tournament. So let's say for the largemouth, I get 100 points. And for the smallmouth, I would get 50 points. So I could actually click the species. And here we're looking at the details for the species, how it's actually affecting the tournament. And you notice this one is a primary catch. That's by default. Primary catches versus secondary catches, there's not much difference here. The primary catches is awarded the default points as we have it set up in our tournament settings, and the secondary is not awarded those default points. We don't care about the default points. We're going to just put in scoring here. We're going to put in 100 points. So on the scoring tab, we set our default points per catch. And if we decided that we wanted to, if we've got maybe some data entry people we don't trust very much, we could lock our points. So we could say yes, and you can't change those 100 points. It's, every time there's a largemouth bass entered, 100 points will be applied and they can't be changed. I trust our data entry people because that's going to be me. So I'm going to leave it as no. These two options down here, those are more for offshore tournaments, but you can look into them if you want to do that. And we have another video if you're running an offshore tournament about setting up your species for that as well, so you can check that out. And the details, we're not going to get into the details. But anyway, we've got our general setup here, and it looks pretty good. We're not going to worry about tagging. We're going to definitely keep this active so that it actually shows up in our catch log. And we're going to save our changes to this largemouth. So we've got 100 points for the largemouth, and let's go set up 50 points for our smallmouth. And now that's set up. All right, so now if I go over to the event log, and I went to enter in a largemouth, you'll see that we've already got 100 points set here for our largemouth. So if I switch this over to smallmouth, you see this changes to 50. So if I go to John Smith, and I don't care about the weight, unless I just want to add in points, I give 50 points to John Smith for his smallmouth bass. And John Smith comes back and weighs a largemouth, and I put in the catch. Then I've got 100 points for the largemouth. And let's say I actually do care about the weight. So John comes back, and let's say he has a 7.25 pounder. I can add in that 7.25 pounds, and the points I can keep, or I can actually change them here because I didn't lock them. And I add the catch for that. So now, did I just write 7.3? I did. Oh, I did not. I wrote 7.25, and you'll notice that it changed to 7.3. Why? Because it got rounded up from 7.25 to 7.3, and that is because if we go back to our setup page and we go to our tournament settings over here underneath the logo, under the scoring tab, you'll see that our weight format is numeric, and it only goes down to the tenths decimal place, not the hundredths. So if I wanted it to go down to the hundredths, I could change this, and I could change this to numeric to the hundredths, like the example here, and I could save that. And I could go back to the event log, and I would see that this would now be 7.25 instead of 7.3. And all right, so that's slightly more advanced setup, not really advanced, but more complicated, because now we have multiple species. And then again, if you go, I'm going to empty this log real quick since we're kind of done with that. Under the setup, you can see that we can add as many species as we want. So we could add in a whole set of species, and that can be primary, a mix of primary and secondary. And then all of those species, once they're added in here, will be available in this catch submission form underneath this choice here. The other thing that we could do while we're here is customize this form. So let's say we don't care about either the points or the weight. So let's say we just get rid of the points completely. If we go over here to customize this form, we could turn off points. We could turn off weight. We could turn off penalties and all sorts of things here. Let's say we don't even care about tags, which we don't. And let's say we want to enter in multiple items at once. So let's say we want to enter in a largemouth and a smallmouth every single time an angler comes up for weighing in. So we can set this event count to 2. And we could change our default species, the first one to large and the second one to small. And we could save that. And now we've got our default species already set up with our points, the 100 and the 50. And if John Smith comes up, now we can immediately add in, let's say we're adding in a weight, just a single pounder. And this one will be a 8.75 pounder. And that's cool. We can add that event. And we've got these 2 catches entered in for John Smith. And just for the fun of it, we could go over here and we could select these 2, and we could print a receipt, a weigh-in receipt for these 2. You'll see the largemouth and the smallmouth are added in with their points and their weights and everything. And we're not going to print that out, but you can see how you would do so. I'm going to turn those guys off here. And so that's your multi-species setup. So let's empty this again. And now let's say our weigh-in format for our tournament is we really don't care much about the species as much as we care about the total weight of what the angler or the team is bringing up. And so let's say we're scoring against that total weight, and also let's say we want to know the big fish weight as well from that same bag. So you get a bag, you pull out the big fish, and you weigh that separately and then all together with the total weight. You may not necessarily want to have your species set up like this, largemouth and smallmouth. So let's say we get rid of these 2 guys, and we can set up our species to basically be whatever we want. We don't the software's not going to limit you to naming your species correctly. In fact, if you want, and a lot of tournaments do this, you may click Add Species, and instead of calling it largemouth bass, you could call it total weight. And there it is already in our system. And then you could set up a second species called big fish. And so now this tournament doesn't care about the species as much as it cares about what we're weighing in. So now if we go back to the event log and we load things up, you'll see that we have the choice here now of big fish and total weight. So let's say we can have our first item to be weighed in would be our big fish, and our second item to be total weight. So we can enter in our big fish, let's say it's our 5-pounder again. And our total weight would be, I don't know, 22 pounds. And of course we're entering that in for John. We add him in, and now we've got the total weight and the big fish entered in at the same time. So that works out for a lot of your smaller tournaments that are looking at just the total weight and big fish. Again, you could set up your leaderboards in any way you want. You can have it, totaling up all the total weights, or finding the biggest total weight, or finding the biggest largemouth or smallmouth, or both. And with this setup, you can also find your biggest fish. Again, so it's pretty easy. Your species setup is up to you, however you want to do it. These are just some recommendations, and they work well. But one of the things I would recommend is just make sure you keep it as simple as possible. Your data entry people will be very happy with a catch submission form that's simple and to the point. Another thing you can do in the catch submission form, if we go back there, is customize it to just show what you want it to show. So let's say we do have a single species, and we have and we don't care about any of these extra options. We just want to know, let's say the big fish weight. Well, let's go back here. Well, we'll do multiple species, but we're going to customize this form. Let's get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. So we're going to get rid of the penalties. We don't use penalties, let's say, in this tournament. So we're going to get rid of that, the penalty notes, get rid of the photo, get rid of points. We're not going to use points. Not worry about this. This included scoring, by the way, just so you understand what that is that lets you add in a catch that doesn't necessarily apply to leaderboards. So if you have a catch that you're entering in, you don't know whether it should apply to the leaderboard yet or not, or maybe it's ambiguous. Maybe you get a weigh-in card that the numbers on it aren't as legible as you'd wish. You can not include it in scoring for a little while, and then come back to it later and include it in the scoring, and then it will update the leaderboard. So when it's not included in scoring, it won't update leaderboards. We're going to just uncheck that box. We're not even going to even include that in our options. And then let's say it's always catches. We don't even need to worry about the event type. So our default event type is catches, or we can do releases if we wanted to. Take that out. And now we have a much more simple catch form. So it's basically the name, the time, and what we're weighing in. So we could do big fish. And here I would actually probably set big fish total weight as the default. And that's a very simple catch form. So anyway, there's a lot of ways you can set this up, but those are a few different ways for your inshore tournaments to get set up in WebPro Tournament Manager.